Welcome to the Gen.ai podcast, where the future meets fun and tech talk trends. Get ready to dive into the world of artificial intelligence like never before. Your hosts, Dale, Alan, Greg, and Val, are about to take you on a wild ride through the AI universe. So, buckle up, tune in, and let the AI adventure begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gen.ai podcast. We're here in person.
We're on a roll.
We are on a roll. It's been awesome. Greg sends his apologies. He wanted to be in person with us, but it's great. We've got a camera there, Al. We've got one there. We've got one over there as well.
Yeah, I know, right? It's going to be...
We don't know if this is going to work or not, but we're trying things out for you guys. So we're going to try and make this better every single episode if we can.
We're using the sponsor money.
We're using the sponsor money we don't have yet. So if you want to sponsor us, please get in touch.
£1 million an episode.
Exactly.
We're open to any currency, actually.
Any currency in the world, Zim dollars, Bitcoin, anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress. I think it's been a couple of weeks since we've last spoken about anything. And I miss your company. I miss Greg's company. But most of all, I miss chatting about what's actually happening. We chat offline, but sharing what's happening with everyone out there and what our thoughts and views are. One of the things that, and I know you probably have a few things, but one of the things that I want to put on the table first and foremost.
Go for it.
Vibe coding.
Okay.
You've heard of this concept?
Yeah.
So I just recently came across this. Vibe coding is where we have developers that are basically getting lazy and letting AI do all of the development for them.
Yeah.
And them not actually checking it or anything like that, and pretending to work and all those types of things. What are your thoughts around this? Because this is a topic that's starting to surface.
Okay, immediately do this, right? I don't know. It depends on how you look at it, right? Because like vibe coding is pretty interesting because basically you're no longer writing any code. You're sort of like saying, do this, do that, edit this, now change it this way, right? And for that to happen, you need to have a plan of what you want anyway, right? It's not like you can just make it up. But it is an opportunity to get lazy, right? So the opportunity to get lazy is then to not check or not even test. And that's mostly the problem, right? So if you don't do the things that you need to do as part of like releasing code, that's where the problems come out of. And I think, there's a lot of good coding agents. Like Cursor is amazing, Devin is great, and like you can end up in that pattern. I don't think there's anything like inherently bad about it. Because like if you think about who are the smartest developers in the world, it's actually the laziest people on the planet.
Sure.
Because it's the kind of person who like, I am tired of doing this 5-minute task every week. I'm going to make it happen by itself. Those are the good developers, right? So vibe coding, in a sense, is a version of that.
How do we put the right controls in place, though, right? Because
controls exist. Controls exist, right? Like this is like where you have code review, you have unit testing, QA.
As someone buying the tech, what do I ask for to make sure that wasn't just someone, or maybe not even buying it, as someone receiving the outcome of that technology? What do I ask for to gain confidence that that technology was built with control?
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't want to have to audit people's software development processes.
Yeah,
right?
You don't want to audit that. I agree with that.
Because then you are like descending into a hellhole of nitpicking and finding all sorts of stuff, right? But like, what you want to know is, what are people doing after the code is written? And like, this is difficult, but you can get heuristics.
Yeah.
Right. So like, if it's an established software company with a team of engineers, you're pretty much guaranteed that that's happening.
Okay.
Because good engineers don't let good engineers be bad.
So is it a case then you don't necessarily want to audit the software per se, but the organization or company should have the right, whether it's ISO accreditations or some certifications in place to sound effects outside.
Yeah.
Some sort of certifications in place to go actually, or how do we know?
ISO and SOC 2 and that kind of stuff, like they look a little bit into the software development process, but really it's, I guess, like a lot of it is going to be reputation. Right?
Okay.
Like you can also just look at the team composition, right? If it's a 2-person company and one person's writing the code, it is way more likely that that code is not being reviewed by virtue of the fact that there's not going to be anyone available to review that code who isn't the person that wrote it. And that's kind of the same whether you're vibe coding or not, right? So then it's really trust-based.
Yep.
But if you're an organization, like even like an engineering team of 15 people, like software engineers are very, very, I was going to say precious, but precious is not the right word. They're very particular about code quality, right? And so if you have an experienced software engineer on a team, there's going to be QA, there's going to be unit testing, there's going to be a lot of other stuff. Right?
Yeah, I do take your point. People that are into it are generally quite proud of what they produce and what they do.
Yeah.
And they don't want there to be any flaws in what they do because that's on them. In effect, and you know this because you write your own code as well, if you put out something that is flawed, you're like, shit, that is a representation of me.
Yeah.
And so
there's going to be a lot of people that don't think that way, right? And that's kind of what you want to protect yourself against is. And the reality is that right now, anyone who's vibe coding is either prototyping some stuff that is going to be very like, it's very unlikely that you're going to have someone trying to sell you a product that has been fully vibe coded in the way that that you described, which was without checks and governance or anything like that on code quality. And certifications to a certain extent give you more certainty about that. I guess my worry is less about things like software breaking down. Software breaks down all the time anyway, right? So we know that. And that's why bugs exist and why there's continuous delivery processes. But actually, I'm more worried about the number of zero-day attacks that are going to become commonplace because of vibe coding. And it's mostly because if you're vibe coding, there's also probably a lot less effort that's being done on architecture design.
Yeah. Right. So I think one to check out, but I thought I want to put that one on the table just because it's top of my list.
Yeah.
A bit selfish here, and hopefully that helps the listeners as well, because I never knew vibe coding was a thing, and it's actually is it a bit of a sarcastic phrasing, vibe coding?
It is a little bit, yeah.
So just go with the vibe type thing. The other one that I know we've spoken about before, and I know this is a bugbear of yours.
Oh dear.
Is this whole view that I've used AI once, it doesn't work, therefore it's shit. And
I've got a meme about it.
I know you've got a meme about it. The thing that I still struggle with is not necessarily that it's to AI or not to AI. It's the whole view on dichotomies, that it's either this or that, where we know it's more symbiotic than we'd like to think. It makes good headlines. It gets you likes and follows potentially when there's a this versus a that. But why can't it be an and, this and that?
You're right? And like any rational being, human or not, would reason that is how it actually works, right? Like, sure, LLMs seem to not to be able to count the number of R's in strawberry, for now anyway, right? And like, actually reasoning models are a lot better at it. But that's not a good reason to say that all AI is doomed because it does one thing wrong, right? Any rational being that is asked to think about that proposition will come to that conclusion. However, and this is exactly why the Daily Mail still exists, hate creates views.
Mm.
So if you have an audience that has already decided that they hate the idea of AI,
mm-hmm.
then they use that as evidence to prove that therefore AI doesn't work and we cannot use AI in our organization because it can't count the number of R's in strawberry. And that gets you the likes, the follows, whatever it is you're going after, or the book sales, right? So, you know, you can put out a series on why AI doesn't work and that kind of stuff where like you're pouring fuel on a fire of hate and dislike, which is actually mostly emotionally driven, which is a great tactic. History will probably prove you wrong, but you know.
Yeah, and
if you're selling newspapers, if you're selling books, if you're selling views, history doesn't matter.
Yeah,
or future history.
No, I know, and this is true, and so this is I guess the social dynamics we live in, versus actually how can we be optimistic about what we have available at our disposal, rather than just putting it into the rubbish bin just because it doesn't suit.
Yeah, you're an optimist. I'm an optimist. We have pretty much everybody following this podcast is going to be an optimist in some way, right?
Yeah, I think here's the thing, and Greg said it before, right? Is that we have strong opinions and beliefs, but loosely held. If you can convince me otherwise,
yeah, and no, that's
right.
That's actually like I know where Greg gets this because it's the incubator that both our companies came out of. Like one of their most important principles is strong opinions weakly held.
Yeah,
right. And this is like an entrepreneur first. One of the early mantras from Entrepreneur First.
And I think that's great and fantastic. We need strong opinions. If we hold them weakly, not to say that we should be flaky, but if someone can convince us with a decent argument that there's an alternative, then we should be open to that.
That is literally the scientific principle, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works, right? Like you have a working model of how things are, and until that's proven wrong, that's your best model.
Yeah.
So you always use the best. If it's a mental model, it's a physics model, if it's whatever, right?
Yeah. So just bring it back, I think. For me, it's a case of, okay, how do we... So those that are going, well, it's all shit because shit in, shit out. Or the one I like to use is garbage in, gospel out. Good friend, Paul Gooch. Give him a shout out.
I mean, I guess it's true, right? Like if you train a model on crap data, you'll get a model that gives you crap outputs, right? And if we're talking about language models, do you remember what Microsoft did with putting a language model on Twitter quite a few years ago, right? Like within 24 hours, they had to pull it offline because it literally became a Nazi.
Yeah.
And it was incredible, right? But like what that does is it tells you a lot more about the kind of people on Twitter that are tweeting at it than AI itself.
Yeah.
Right? So what's important is then, yeah, sure, the people building the models need to have very good controls on the data that goes in. And, for the most part, that is true, right? That's why there's alignment teams. That's why there's a lot of data quality control at any company building models, right? And mistakes will be made. And sometimes Cursor is going to tell you, I'm not going to write your code for you because it's trained on Stack Overflow. Like nobody talks about this, right? There's this example of Cursor responding to someone asking it to generate some code.
Yes.
And it responded like, I'm not going to do your job for you. Pretty much, like I'm paraphrasing, right? But it's like, because otherwise you're not going to learn how to do it.
Yep.
And that is pretty much the stereotypical answer on Stack Overflow when someone asks to do something, because Stack Overflow has very strict rules about you can't do other people's homework, right? And Stack Overflow is mostly, when you talk about coding, it's like CS students asking about stuff. And so someone's like, I'm not going to do your homework for you. Go learn it, but here's some pointers how you can go learn it. And guess what? Coding models are trained on all of Stack Overflow, of course, right? Because that's one of the best places to find information about coding. So every once in a while, and like for now it's only happened once, you're going to get that sort of answer, right? But that doesn't mean that it's all garbage first of all.
Yes.
Right? And anyone saying that therefore cursor is valueless has lost their mind, right? Because they forgot the already hundreds of millions of lines of code that have been written by cursor, whether it's vibe coding or not, right? Because like vibe coding is basically you're sitting there pressing tab and saying, no, do this, press tab, 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 no, do this, tab, 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 right?
And there's some where I was reading, it's actually voice to text as well, so you don't have to tap anything. You just
you can just
So
you can create even more shortcuts because I said the best developers are the laziest ones, right? So they're like, I don't want to press tab on my keyboard because I have to move my finger. So I was just like, Homer Simpson would have been an amazing developer.
Yeah, drinking beer and just talking to a computer.
That's basically it. Yeah.
Exactly. The other one that sprung to mind, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I saw it was a quick thing I saw. They were talking about, I can't remember who posted it, something about LLMs versus LCMs.
Ooh, yes.
What is an LCM for those that don't know?
So it's basically a completely different architecture. So instead of being a language model that models the next word,
which is what an LLM does, right?
Yes. So it's large language model, and what's happening is that you have speculative decoding from like an embedding space, and you basically searching for what is the most likely next word in that sequence. Really, right? What it's doing under the hood is there's an extra step, which is why it's called large concept models, where instead of having tokens for words, you have basically tokens for ideas.
Okay.
So it's not quite right. I'm trying to simplify it a little bit. But you have like basically tokens for ideas. So you're like, what is the next idea in this sequence? And then you decode the idea to words again. Right? So it's like kind of like two-steppy a little bit. So like the architecture is a lot more complex, right? And you get much larger number of parameters for the models, but it's kind of like the next thing. And if you think about it, it makes logical sense, right? If we're like decoding the next item in terms of words, that gives you, Markov did this 200 years ago, right? He took some text and took the statistics of all the words and tried to prove that actually the next word depends statistically on the sequence before it, right? And that's what LLMs are based on, like that idea. But actually, this is true of concepts as well, right? So like, if I'm formulating a paragraph or a set of sentences, I say a part, the next part is going to be highly dependent on what I just said.
Yes.
Right?
So rather than just the word.
Rather than the word, and that's why it's large concept models. The problem with large concept models, I think for me now, is that, I mean, they're benchmarking very well, but the space blows up, right? The reason why language models kind of work is because you have a limited set.
Okay.
The number of tokens, different tokens you can have is limited, right? And so like this is why models improve so much when you change the tokenizer. You change the tokenizer to include more tokens, the models improve so much because they decode to more stuff and they can represent things internally differently. But we're sort of in the world of like, call it 250,000 tokens, 500,000 tokens-ish. When we talk about words. If you think about like, then you're talking about concepts, where concepts can be a combination of many words and like lots of different variants of those combinations, but the number of concepts that you can have is infinite.
It's like the lotto, right? There's lots of different combinations of
numbers.
Except
that like now you've got basically a virtually infinite set. So then the tokenization becomes a complex problem to solve, and there's work being done in that space. I'm very excited about LCMs, and I think it is possibly going to be the next architecture that gives us another breakthrough. It remains to be seen.
Is anyone using it now? The ChatGPTs, the OpenAIs, the Groks. Is anyone using it?
Not that I know of. Right? Meta published their paper on LCMs, but I don't think there's like any production API or anything that's using LCMs. I may be wrong. I just don't know of any.
Okay.
If you do know of any, comment, email me, shout. I don't know, because I want to know and I want to test it.
Yeah. So again, just seeing these things come out, and interestingly, you can have a feed of memes going AI shit, or you can have a feed of memes going look at the cool things that are coming up depending on what you're clicking and reading on. So it's almost.
I'm gonna create a parody account now.
Are you?
Create a parody account.
We're
Yeah,
not
I
gonna
think
tell anyone
you
the
just
name,
gave me
though.
the idea. Huh?
Are we going to tell everyone the name or no?
Let's make a name up now.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you have a middle name?
I don't, but it's all right. We'll figure out a name. We'll post them. We'll tell you in the next episode, so you come and watch that. I'll create a parody account, and it will only be generated hate for AI.
Yeah. Okay.
And so let's see how many likes it gets. How many? I bet you it's going to have within 6 months more followers than you and me combined.
Okay. Cool social experiment, I think. But I've been putting quite a few things on the table. What's been happening in your world? I know you've been traveling a little bit to the States. You went
bit of travel, bit of jet lag, bit of everything. I think you've put the interesting stuff on the table. One that other people are talking about now is Manus.
Yes, I've seen Manus.
And I said it, right? The future's agents. That's an example of an agent. And some people got upset when they figured out it was calling Claude underneath. I'm like, what do you think it was doing, right? But that is what a lot of the world is going to look like professionally quite soon, right? So like, we'll just see more and more of this kind of stuff come out.
Yeah, and that's Manus, Manus.
There is an open source version, which I am a fan.
Hugging Face or no? Oh, different.
No, someone. You can find it on Hugging Face, I think. But I don't know who. I can't remember who wrote it. But they removed the M from the name. And it's amazing because everybody's using it now, and you're like, how do you pronounce it?
Anus?
Yeah.
Listeners, you tell us how you pronounce Anus.
Yeah.
Depends where it's from, right? I mean, depends which accent you...
I mean, I am pretty sure it's deliberate, and I just love people that name things in funny ways. So for me, it already gets infinite points.
Well, I think it's a serious topic, but I think it's good that we bring in humor to these things. I think this is a bit of our style as well. Have a bit of banter, have a laugh, but there's some, hopefully some education for you on all of this as well.
Yeah. But like, if you take yourself seriously, then you're going to be the person that gets hung up on how many R's are in strawberry.
How many are there?
One.
Yeah. One of the other things that I've been thinking about recently, and I know we've touched on this before, is this sort of idea that there's competition amongst various governments and states to, be the best at AI. The whole US versus China, UK, Russia, France. Like, is this all just noise? Because, or is there sort of geographical border competition that makes a difference or not?
This is 100% my personal opinion, and it's going to be controversial.
Well, this is what the people want.
But honestly, who cares? Like, and we have this is like common parlance, right? But like, and you'll see it a lot in the news as well, right? Where like, there's a new scientific development that came out of, let's say like, there's like a scientific development that came out of MIT, right? The way it gets reported is like, the Americans have discovered this, right? Or like, and it could be any other country, right?
Sure.
And, DeepSeek comes out of a hedge fund. It's like, the Chinese have done this. And like, there is no nationality attached to this stuff. So stop. Who cares where it came from, right? And like, you can maybe argue that in some places there would be state-driven influences to make some things nefarious, right? So like, if there's a North Korean model, I mean, I take a look at it. And, test for security, whatever. But who cares? And there's this governments racing each other, like, we need to have the best AI in our countries, like as if it's like the space race in the 60s. And the reality is that in the space race, the US government put an infinite amount of money into NASA, right? To get everything done and the Apollo missions and everything else, all the way up to the space shuttle. right? But Stargate is entirely privately funded.
Mm-hmm.
I love Matt Clifford, by the way. He is one of my heroes. He founded EF, and now he's doing incredible work. But, you know, Keir Starmer announced the AI strategy in the UK like a week before Stargate. And there's like 20 billion coming from private investments. This is like, the governments are not doing anything, right? They're announcing things, changing regulation, maybe, hopefully, right? But where's the investment is all private. So nationality shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? The only thing that governments can do at this point is invest and change regulation. And they're not doing one of them, so they better do the other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting one because genuinely, you look at the media, right? And that is a narrative. You can see it. There's a narrative on countries and nationality. And yeah, how can you put, and just when you're talking about the MIT, you know, something came out of MIT, but those students at MIT are probably from all over the world anyway.
First of all, yes, right? That's an excellent point. The same as like, you know, half of NASA comes from somewhere else, right? Yeah. And there's like citizenship requirements for certain things at NASA, but all of that research, it's like completely international, right? And this is kind of my point. Like, and then like, you know, JPL puts a rover on Mars, right? Forget AI, right? And JPL, state funded, it's NASA. They put a rover on Mars, and there's like an enormous number of people that come from all over the world, right? And actually, the Mars rovers are not just a NASA thing. There's like a joint mission with all sorts of things, right? Even the space shuttle had the Canada arm, which like literally comes from Canada. That's why it's called that, right? And it's got a little Canadian flag on it, right? Or unfortunately, the International Space Station is called the International Space Station. And like, but that's what real life is like, right? So like when you say like, oh yeah, the British have invented a new form of AI. I don't know, right? We haven't, but like we, right? And like nothing wrong with what he's doing, but does the driver of the bus that I took to get here today, did he, because it was a male, I'm not generalizing, I literally did take the bus, did he do anything for that? No, right? So don't generalize to the British, right? It might be like, oh yeah, there's a new paper that came out, Cambridge, and you can be specific about it without making it, I guess, nationalistic wars. Yeah. Nationalistic competition. Sorry, it's a long rant. I just hate that generalization because it just doesn't do anything for anyone.
This is my job, is to see which of these topics I can elicit the most animated response from you.
Okay. Yes, you're doing it very well.
Just to add to that, you know, love him or hate him, Elon has changed identity. He was South African, he's now American. If you love him, he's South African. If you hate him, he's American. Okay, we'll just put that.
Well, this is a whole thing, right? But it's like, and it really, it depends, right? Like, and if you're American and you hate him, like if you're South African and you love him, he's South African, right? But it's the opposite, and like, who cares, right?
Who cares?
It's
exactly
a dude that's doing some things. You may agree with some of them, and you may hate others. And this is like the whole association problem as well, right? Because like Teslas are pretty great cars.
Yep.
But people are ditching their Teslas because of some of the stuff that Elon is doing in Doge.
Yep.
Right? And then you're like,
it's all interconnected. But we should actually give, this is all unstructured as we know, so we're going all over the show. But we should actually give a shout out to where we're at.
Yes.
It's at Regent's University. In the middle of Regent's Park.
Yeah.
Amazing setting.
Beautiful place.
Those of you that are watching us, you maybe can see out the window. Maybe
20-minute bus ride from Paddington.
20-minute bus ride. I'm glad you used public transport. Well done.
Yeah, always. Especially.
And we hear there is an AACE conference going on as well in the background. So huge shout out to Jareth and Zhao as well for putting it on.
First one for Region 9.
Something like that.
I hope I'm getting that right.
Yeah, we're here to support as well. And it's primarily focused on the project controls community. And you're presenting later.
I am.
I guess there'll be some that won't be able to attend this and listen to you talk. But I guess it's tailored to the project controls community, and a lot of our listeners on this would be in that profession. What are some of the ideas, thoughts that you're going to be putting out there when you're presenting? Because I think there's still, in many cases, I've said this to you before, I think we're in an echo chamber, or certainly I am in. I'm privileged enough to speak to folks like yourself where I talk about this technology all the time. But I think there's a lot of folks out there that still are yet to get on the journey. Is there going to be some of that in terms of what you...
So, yeah, the main topic, I mean, I'm hijacking it a little bit, confession. And by the time this podcast is out, that will have already happened. Where we wrote a paper for AAC's international conference last year, which was mostly based on, I'm going to call it the core thing that MPlan does, which is like AI-driven schedule risk analysis, right? So we wrote a paper that describes that, and then that got published. We did a whole talk. So I'm going to start from there, but then I'm going to try and take people on a journey, right? So if you can now do a QSRA in 5 minutes, which has better, more grounded forecasts based on your historical data, your current project, and better modeling with complete removal of all the biases that we all talk about now, and everybody loves talking about biases, right? Since Kahneman wrote Noise. The book is literally called Noise. And I'm basically going to try and take people on a journey. So if you can do this quickly, and it's infinitely scalable and infinitely cheap, what does that mean? Right? So what if instead of doing one, I can do 40,000 different options? What does that mean for my project? How do I run it differently? Well, now if I can do it 40,000 times a day for one project, I can do it 40,000 times a day for all the projects. How do I model interactions within the portfolios of my projects, whatever, if I have multiple projects? And we've only really been able to close that loop logically with schedule generation, because like if you're doing a quantitative schedule risk analysis right now, the option generated has always been risk by exclusion. Like, what if this goes well? What if this goes bad? What if this goes well? What if this goes bad? Right? But actually, scenario-based thinking, which comes from, I love talking about the MDU, but it kind of requires you to actually think about how would you do things differently.
Oh, we've spoken about this a little while ago, and I don't think we were there yet when we originally spoken about it. But are we there yet, or are we close to now simulating potential outcomes in terms of project delivery, and how accurate would those simulations be? Because, and I'll play devil's advocate here, and hopefully I'll press the right buttons for you.
Yeah, trigger me.
What about those that say, actually, but Alan, all you're doing is you're just looking at schedule data that's not accurate anyway, and there's other conditions that are out there like weather patterns and ground conditions and human factors, people, capabilities that you're not factoring in?
Well, the first thing I'll say, that's not happening anymore. So there's a lot more other data that goes in, right? And not just weather patterns. Like even things that Barry can pick up from Teams calls that might be relevant go into forecasting now. That said, sure, what's your best alternative? You're going to go to PRA, and I'm only picking on PRA because it's free now. And you're going to draw some triangles, and then those triangles are completely made up on some opinion that you hold. And that's going to be your forecast of what's going to happen. And then someone's going to say, but yeah, we need to hit P80 on the planned end date. So then you're going to manipulate those triangles and get to an answer that you've been told to get to. End of risk analysis. No change is going to happen. And you're not going to consider any other scenarios. That is, I'm going to say, the vast majority of how risk analysis gets manipulated and misguided right now. So, yeah, true. There will be some things that are not in there, right? What if a meteorite lands on your site and you have to clear it and do a lot of work. Like, I mean, I guess you could list that out manually as an option to generate as a scenario. Should you? No.
And I guess this is what we do today on projects, because the way I like to think of it and explain it is we always know there's a range of outcomes on any project.
Yeah.
And in my because I've got a very simple mind, so I think simply. And
it's the best way. Like, you know what? Like, the smartest people think in simple terms. So don't say that in a derogatory way, because it is actually great.
So I think of the way we currently at large look at projects and schedules is we have a project schedule, which in most instances is one version of how we may deliver a project.
Yeah.
We then look at that one version, or maybe not even, and then in isolation go very linearly, this risk may happen, this may be the impact, this is what I'm going to do to mitigate it, and this is the post-mitigated position. And so that is all linear, right? And so they're not interlinked. And you run a QSRA, and you have this distribution curve, and all of a sudden you have a potential range of outcomes with a confidence level on a single scenario. That's how I think of it. What I think of when we bring technology in is the ability to do that on multiple scenarios and at large. And so why wouldn't you do that? Because you can do it in parallel, right? And it gives you, for me, what it does is just narrows the range of outcomes for you at the same time. It sounds counterintuitive because, you're bringing more scenarios in. But actually, if you think about it,
you're absolutely right.
The very nature of linear thinking on a single schedule provides a massive risk within itself. Because you're only considering one scenario.
Let's talk about physics for a second.
Sure.
We're missing the physicist.
Hi, Greg.
But let's talk about physics, especially I'm going to call it the uncertainty part of quantum physics. And the reality is, like, in this moment, the future doesn't exist as a straight line, right? If you look backwards from today to 10 days ago, you can draw a straight line.
Yep.
But you can't draw a straight line from now to 10 days in the future. What happens is that there is an infinite number of versions of the future that exist. And as you go forward in time, those versions collapse, right? And this is true at a quantum level. This is not just I don't know what's going to happen, but it is, to a certain extent, to a very large extent, undeterminable, because things at the quantum level are random and just follow certain distributions. That's why particles jump. So if even at that micro level, the future is not determined from the present state unequivocally, that means that the end date of a project cannot be, right? And so I think the new way of thinking about it is you have the infinite number of versions of the future of your project, which you could represent as an infinite number of schedules, right? That's your space that you have to operate in if you're thinking about how you're doing a project. And only having one means that you've left infinity minus one, which is still infinity, out, right? So the game actually should be explore as much of that space as possible, because if you have modeled more of it, you can force the probabilities of the future to collapse in the direction that you want, which is usually faster or cheaper or both, right? If you can. And the way you affect those probabilities is by doing things now that change those outcomes, right? So you're like modifying the probability space as you go. If you do that, then you're going to be successful with projects. This is my mad scientist, always sunny in Philadelphia kind of description of why uncertainty is the only thing that matters on projects.
So I was just my sinister mind part of me goes, are there gamblers out there that will wear sort of wearables and use this tech when they're playing blackjack or roulette to try and narrow down the outcomes?
Yes. Yeah. No. This has been done. There's, oh my God, I need to find the name. I will mention it in the next episode. Or I will find a way of communicating it. But there's someone who's been banned from casinos.
Yeah.
Like, for card counting is a version of this, right? So like card counting at blackjack is a way of knowing what the probability space actually looks like. But you're not modifying it. What you're modifying is your bet in relation to the probability space.
Yes.
So as soon as you have better probabilities of hitting a blackjack, you increase your bet. And so that's kind of like basically algorithmic trading. That's exactly what it is. But actually, there's someone who built, and they had a whole team, and they all got banned, and like it was like, this is like, I think the 70s or the 80s, and there's a very good Veritasium, I think, YouTube video about this. But they built out a whole machinery of like computing what number the roulette's going to land on.
And was it accurate?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They cleaned out, and like they got the shit kicked out of them at some point by obviously casino security, because that's what they're there for, right? Because it's cheating, and even though, like, you know, you're using technology to your advantage, but like this is literally what you want to do, right?
And that's in a closed system, right?
That's in a closed system, which is a lot easier, right? If you're modeling
projects, life
projects
businesses.
are not closed systems, right? You have infinite by infinite an infinite number of times.
Yeah. And I know we're running out of time. So I just wanted to answer your other question earlier. You said, well, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Right? I could reference a previous project and just say it's going to be the same outcome.
And then what do you do?
And then it's just going to...
You accept it?
Yeah, I'm going to forecast based on that reference.
Oh, okay. I see where we're going. Yeah, you can. You absolutely can, right? You can say, I'm going to model how Microsoft stock is going to play out tomorrow by looking at how IBM and Apple stock did in the 80s and making an average of that. You can, right? You can do whatever you want, right?
Should you?
I don't know. You can. I mean,
leave that out to
you could put two fingers in that plug. It's not going to work out well for you, right? And I think, first of all, you know, the act of choosing what you put into the average is the biggest act of manipulation that you can do.
Yes.
To get to the answer that you want to tell someone rather than the answer that you should have. And, you know, I don't know of anyone who's ever done RCF who hasn't done cherry picking, because that's literally what is prescribed. You're cherry picking. Then you have the inactability problem, right? So like, then you go like, okay, so like all the projects that I have declared as similar to this one had a budget overrun of 20% and a delay of 40%. Okay, so what? Multiply everything by 1.2 and 1.4? Then what do? You do RCF again? Because you're going to multiply by that number again, right? That's an exponential. So you have no recourse of action, and you have no way of modeling again.
Yeah.
Because you're just saying, okay, another delay.
Yes. It's going to be a delay on a delay and a delay.
Either you do that, or you say, I've already done the multiplication, so this is what it's going to be. To be absolutely certain that you're going to be wrong, because the uncertainty dominates everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, right? And like, anytime you say anything with certainty, the only thing you can be certain about is that you're wrong.
So do you think we'll ever get to prescriptive AI?
In what sense?
In that AI tells us exactly what we need to do to deliver projects, let's say in this context.
You can get to a point where, forget AI, right? Like, let's call it...
Sorry, now I shift gears dramatically there from reverse into sixth, but...
Yeah. No, like, let's call it a black box, all-knowing thing, which in statistics is called an oracle.
Yes.
Which has nothing to do with Oracle software. But let's say that you have this oracle, like the oracle on a mountain tells you what could it do for you, right? What could it do? And the only thing that it can do within the limitations of physics is say, these are the actions that lead you to the best possible probability distribution of how things are going to go out, that basically maximizes the outcome that you have stated as desired. Right? And so basically you can work through, say that you had infinite compute and infinite accuracy. You can model the infinite possibilities forward. You go to the one that you like the most. You reverse that line backwards and you're like, what are the decisions that I made along the way? Right? And that still is not a certain outcome, because all those decisions will also lead to many other outcomes on that tree.
Yep.
In fact, they'll lead to infinite other outcomes, but they'll be collapsed together.
Well, to what something you said earlier is like, do we care? Well, maybe this life and death, yes. But actually, having unknowns is really cool in some certain circumstances.
Unknowns are always opportunities.
Yeah, it's opportunities. It keeps life interesting. It gives us an opportunity to use our brains as well and solve problems.
Yes.
So we can be lazy if we want to. We can use the tech out there. We can use vibe coding. We can use vibe project delivery. Maybe that's
vibe scheduling, right?
Vibe scheduling, exactly. But no, I think we certainly I wait with enthusiasm to see what is evolving in this space, because if you go back to when we started this podcast, so much has changed, and I think it's continuing to change. I think it's great that we talk about this, challenge each other, but I just want to bring it back as well as those, those strong opinions weakly held, I think is the phrase.
Oh yeah, prove me wrong and I'll change my mind on everything, right?
Yeah, and I think those are the types of people like Alan where you gain most, I think, value is where, yes, you have strong opinions, but you're open to discussion, debate, and discourse, which is fantastic as well.
I mean, I also come off as slightly mad on this podcast as well because you set me up so much. I totally blame you, and I should have predicted all these scenarios. Yeah, and one of the things that I love is that we're going to unlock, first of all, so much opportunity that we would not see otherwise, right? But also, you actually get to do the things that you love doing rather than the things that you have to do because someone told you and like you're cranking a handle forever, right? Yep. That might be an uncomfortable change for a small amount of time. Yep. I think, and what I've described as like my future vision of how this works is only hypothetical. Like we'll never get exactly to that point. The only thing that we can do is try and get as close as possible to it.
Yeah, and I think we know that the debate is settled. AI is here to stay. It will impact your job in some way, shape, or form.
I thought AI is all garbage. It's done. Ditch it. And you have to ditch computers and phones.
I think so, and just go fishing.
Because a phone can't count how many hours are in Strawberry, right?
On that note, folks, we're going to end the episode there. Thank you so much for spending the time listening to us talk, rant, have a discussion, have a debate. It's always fun, being able to chat to you, Alan, as well. Good to see you. Good luck for your presentation.
Thank you.
By the time
Good to see you too. Stick around for the next episode where we're going to reveal the names of and references of those things that we mentioned, which I actually already forgot.
Well, I think the only one to remember, I think, is you're going to create this account. That's good.
Oh, I'm also going to do that. Yes.
Yeah. So, but we'll leave it there, folks. Thank you so much. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.
Bye.